think we actually got somewhere. We got Brooks in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Hi.
Hi, Brooks. Thanks for waiting.
How's it going, Matt and Jen?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm a first-time caller, first-time listener. I'm just kind of I was calling because a friend asked me to call, and I'm a theist.
Okay.
So I believe in God, and I heard this is the Atheist Show, and so I figured I might call you up and debate you a little bit.
Pag sinabi nating theist, tumutukoy ito sa mga taong naniniwala sa Diyos. Yun yung broad sense ng word na theist. Pero pag sinabi nating atheist, ito ay term na tumutukoy sa mga hindi naniniwala sa Diyos. In a strict sense naman, pag sinabi nating theist, ito yung mga naniniwala na meron silang o posibleng magkaroon ng personal relationship with God. Ang kabaligtaran naman nun ay mga deist o yung mga naniniwala na may Diyos pero hindi sila naniniwala na nakiki-interact ang Diyos actively sa buhay ng tao. Iba ang atheist sa anti-theist. Ang sinasabi ng isang atheist ay, hindi ako naniniwala sa Diyos. Ang sinasabi naman ng isang anti-theist ay, walang Diyos. Magkaiba yun. Kasi, pag sinabing walang Diyos, yun ay isang claim. Ibig sabihin, naniniwala siya sa isang bagay. At ang pinaniniwalaan niya ay walang Diyos. Samantala, pag sinabing hindi ako naniniwala sa Diyos, yun ay isa lamang rejection ng isang claim. Ang claim na yun ay na may Diyos. Iba naman ang agnostic. Pag sinabi nating agnostic, yun yung mga tao na hindi alam kung may Diyos. Kaya pag gnostic ka, ibig sabihin, alam mong may Diyos. Atheism is about belief. Gnosticism is about knowledge. So, pwede kang maging theist at agnostic. Bakit? Because you believe in God but you don't know if there is a God. Kaso lang, sa mga debate, nagkakaroon ng problema sa ibig sabihin ng belief at knowledge. Kasi may mga nagsasabi na knowledge is justified through belief. At belief daw is just a subset of knowledge or knowledge is just a subset of belief. Kaya may mga nagsasabi na walang kwenta ang distinction between atheism and agnosticism, Gnosticism, and theism. Pero for purposes of conversations regarding knowledge and belief in God, mahalagang i-distinguish itong dalawang ito. Bakit? Kasi yung isa tungkol sa paniniwala at yung isa tungkol sa kaya ba nating alamin kung may Diyos o wala.
What kind of theist?
My friend had a we had a little bit of a debate about where she's an atheist as well, and she said that basically there was a difference between hard atheism and soft atheism, right?
Sure.
Basically, hard atheism being the one where you say that there is no God, and then there's soft atheism where they say, like, well, I'm not really sure. There's probably not a God, right?
Itong idea ng soft atheism at hard atheism ay prinopose ni Richard Dawkins. Kasi nga, sabi ko kanina, sa mga philosophical debates, nagkakaroon ng problema kasi may mga nagsasabi na wala talagang pagkakaiba ang paniniwala at knowledge, belief and knowledge. Kaya prinopose ni Richard Dawkins na meron daw soft atheism at hard atheism. Pero it doesn't matter. Remember the fundamental rule when it comes to burden of proof. He who claims must prove. Allegata et probata. So kung sinabi mong may Diyos, you have to prove that there is a God. Pag sinabi mong walang Diyos, you have to prove that there is no God. Pero mere rejection of any claim. For example, sabi ko, walang Diyos. And you say, I don't believe you. The person who doesn't believe me does not bear the burden of proof because mere rejection does not entail burden of proof.
There's a kind of a quick analogy that might clear this up a little bit. If you're on a jury, your only choices are to vote guilty or not guilty. But with not guilty would be atheism, all atheism inclusive. But within the not guilty category, there's also those people in the jury who are convinced that the defendant's actually innocent. It's not a requirement because the burden of proof is for guilt. And that section of people who would believe that the defendant's actually innocent, that would be the hard atheist. I would qualify there. I don't claim absolute knowledge. I just happen to believe, and first of all, atheism is the rejection of theism. I don't believe in a God.
Right.
Hard atheism, what I would put myself in, depending on people's definitions, I believe there are no gods. So I'm in the I believe the defendant's innocent category.
Sikat na sikat itong trial analogy pagdating sa burden of proof. Kasi pag may inakusahan ka sa korte, ikaw dapat ang magpatunay na ginawa niya yun. Halimbawa, pag sinabi kong pinatay ni Pedro si Juan, kailangan kong patunayan sa korte na talagang pinatay ni Pedro si Juan para makulong si Juan. Ngayon, may mga magsasabi na guilty si Juan. Ako yun. Isa na ako dun. At sasabihin ko na talagang pinatay ni Pedro si Juan. Nasa akin ang burden of proof. Siyempre, ang judge ay hindi naniniwala dun dahil nga sa presumption of innocence. Hindi obligasyon ng judge na patunayan ang kahit ano dahil default position na hindi ka maniwala. Ngayon, kung sinabi ng kabila na inosente siya, pwede silang mag-present ng ebidensya na nagsasabi na siya ay inosente. Hindi kailangan actually sa ating legal system na mag-prove ng innocence si accused. Hindi kailangan pero pwede niyang gawin yun. For example, may video or may CCTV footage na nagpapakita na iba ang pumatay. Pero kahit na manahimik ang accused, kahit na hindi siya magsalita, kahit hindi siya mag-present ng ebidensya para patunayan ang kanyang pagiging inosente, nasa prosecution pa rin, nasa complainant pa rin ang burden of proof, ang obligasyon na patunayan na hindi siya inosente. Kaya itong trial analogy pagdating sa existence ng Diyos ay medyo imperfect. Bakit? Kasi outside the court, in reality, pag sinabi mong walang ganito, hindi totoo ang ganito, may burden of proof ka. Kailangan mong patunayan yung sinasabi mo. Bakit? Because you are making a claim, although it's a null hypothesis. Pag may sinabi ka namang may ganito, totoo ito, kailangan mo ring patunayan yun. Ang walang burden of proof ay yung hindi naniniwala sa claim na sinasabi mo. Either claim na mayroon o claim na wala. Ngayon, paano pag nagbanggaan yung null hypothesis at positive hypothesis? Ibig sabihin, sinabi nung isa, mayroong Diyos. Yung kabila naman, walang Diyos. I would say that both of them have burden of proof. Siyempre kasi pareho silang nagkiklaim. Pero, since itong mga relihiyoso ang nagsasabi na mayroong Diyos, nasa kanila ang mas mabigat na burden of proof. Depende kasi yan sa claim. For example, pag sinabi ng isang tao sa akin na kumain siya ng hotdog kaninang umaga, pwede ko nang tanggapin yun eh. Hindi ko na kailangan ng proof kasi wala namang epekto sa buhay ko yun. Pero pag sinabi niya sa akin na kinain ko na ang kahuli-hulihang itlog sa buong mundo, wala nang itlog pagkatapos nung kinain kong yun, aba maapektuhan na ako. I may have to require proof. Dahil hindi ako naniniwala sa kanya, wala sa akin ang burden. Nasa kanya ang burden na patunayan na wala na talagang mga itlog at kinain niya na yung huli. Remember dito ang sinasabi niya, wala ng ibang itlog. It is just a negative claim. Hindi niya kiniklaim na merong something. Kiniklaim niya walang something. Nasa kanya pa rin ba ang burden of proof? Yes. Because that's still a claim. And since I require a higher quantum of evidence, kailangan niyang i-meet yun. Kasi pag nakakita ako ng itlog mamaya, mali ka. Depende sa claim yan. Kaya nga sa legal system natin, merong tinatawag na substantial evidence, preponderance of evidence, clear and convincing evidence, tsaka proof beyond reasonable doubt. Depende na yan dun sa tao. Depende na sa kanya kung mababang quantum of proof ba ang ire-require niya o yung mataas. Pero of course, the quantum of proof na ire-require mo must be reasonable. Otherwise, wala ka ng paniniwalaan.
I see. Okay. Well, I wanted to at least come over here and tell you at least why I'm a theist, and at least why I think atheism is wrong in a sense, or at least it doesn't do very much to help us as a race.
Malaking problema ito kasi atheism can never be correct or wrong because atheism is a mere rejection of a claim. I'll give you an example. Pag sinabi ko sa iyo na kaninang umaga kinising ako ni Barack Obama at nilutuan ako ni Michelle Obama ng breakfast at sabi mo, di ako naniniwala sa iyo, can you be correct or wrong in not believing me? Of course course not. Because rejection of a claim is not and can never be wrong or correct. Yung claim ko na ginising ako ni Barack Obama at pinaglutuan ako ni Michelle Obama ng breakfast, that can be either correct or wrong. Of course, separate issues yun. Pwedeng totoong ginising ako ni Barack pero hindi ako pinaglutuan ni Michelle. Of course. But my point is, if you don't believe me, you cannot be wrong. Pero pagdating doon sa second opinion ni caller, medyo agree ako sa kanya. Kasi lack of belief or omission or rejection of a claim can have a negative or positive effect in our society. Yun. Valid yung kanyang opening statement.
All right. So
what kind of theist are you? I mean, you may be going to get to that. I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, first of all, I must definitely tell you that I am not a Christian.
Well, I'm
Okay.
just. I assume that usually when somebody identifies themselves as a theist, it's
sadly, I believe that Christianity causes a lot of needless destruction and pain and logic, and it really does make us do a whole lot of stupid things.
Okay, so
However, I do believe that we have to, that basically that we are here, that we are here as
I believe that too.
human beings, and we have a point of view in this world, if nothing else.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah.
But I don't see how that's theism. But we're gonna shut up and you can talk.
So, hindi yata naniniwala sa isang particular religion or particular orthodox concept of God itong si caller. Kaya sabi ni Matt, hindi ko alam kung anong sinasabi mong theist. Baka ang sinasabi ni caller dito, theist siya in the broad sense. Meaning, regarding the debate of whether there is a God, he believes there is. So, nandun siya sa mga nagsasabi na guilty si Pedro. Pero, parang deist siya eh. Well, hindi ko alam. Mahirap na magsalita.
Okay. So from this point of view that we come into this world and we know nothing about it, we must assume that there is a malevolent deity out there, okay, that is willing to trick us.
What?
why?
Huh?
Why do we have to assume that?
Because why isn't there? Why couldn't there be?
Should we also assume that there are pink fairies who tie my shoelaces?
Hey, there may be. We may be the Red King's dream.
So basically, you're
So
saying you
anything
should
goes?
believe anything until it's proven wrong.
Right.
So
gotta
why
prove
aren't
it
you a
wrong.
Christian and a Buddhist and a Muslim all at the same time?
Well, that's just it. We might be wrong. So we have to take the worst possible case scenario and prove it wrong.
No, well, wait. Why should we do that?
Ito ang ayaw ko minsan sa mga atheists. Minsan kasi, pagkausap natin ang mga religyoso, nangyayaring nire-reject natin lahat ng sinasabi nila. In this case, sinasabi ng lalaki, ina-accept niya na baka mali siya. Isa yung magandang bagay. It's a good sign, which should be recognized. I know, may mga sinabi siyang crazy, may mga sinabi siyang fallacious, pero hindi ibig sabihin nito na ire-reject na natin lahat ng sinasabi niya. Sabi niya, we could be wrong, and that's true. Ngayon, punta naman tayo dun sa dalawa niyang sinabi. Sabi niya, pwede daw nating i-assume dahil wala tayong alam tungkol sa kung saan nanggaling ang mundo at hindi kumpleto ang understanding natin ng universe, pwede daw nating i-assume na merong malevolent being o masamang entity out there. Yung pangalawang sinabi niya ay, why should there not be? Tinanong kasi siya ni Jen, why should there be? Sabi niya, bakit naman wala? Punta tayo sa assumption niya na may malevolent being. Our senses are flawed. Alam natin yan. Di ba nga, merong mga visual materials na naloloko yung eyes natin. Ang tawag natin dun ay optical illusions. Minsan may mga naririnig tayong mali. Our perception, our senses are highly inaccurate. Kaya nga, it is most prudent to presume fewer things as possible. To assume fewer things as possible. We cannot just assume everything or anything. We only assume those which are necessary. Meron tayong 3 fundamental assumptions in our interaction with the physical world. Number 1, we assume that the world exists. Number 2, we assume that we interact with the physical world by our or via our senses. And number 3, when we perceive, we learn, and the most useful things, those which give us consistent results, are most likely true. Yun yung mga ina-assume natin kasi necessary sila. We cannot function without assuming these things. Pero hindi mo pwedeng basta i-assume na lang na merong malevolent being out there. That requires proof. And this leads me to his second statement. Sabi niya, why shouldn't there be? Well, mali yun. Because you have the burden of proof. Sabi mo, may malevolent being out there. You should prove that. You cannot just use ignorance para palusutin itong claim mo na ito. It's not okay to say, there is X because I think there is X. Why shouldn't there be X? Therefore, there is X. Hindi pwede yung ganon. That is not a justifiable and necessary assumption.
Why should we do that?
Yeah.
Because if we can prove that the worst possible scenario is BS, then at least that's not true. I mean, that maybe may have not made much sense here, but what I'm trying to say is that I believe that if the worst possible scenario for us being on this earth is correct, and in my case that's Christianity, that basically means that we're going to have a God that someday judges us based off of our decisions, and if we don't have the right decisions, then we're going to get sent to, well, quote-unquote hell, right? Then we have to prove that that's not the case. Okay?
Why?
Why do we have to prove that's not the case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we're wrong and that is the case, then we're screwed.
That's Pascal's wager. That's bullshit.
That's bullshit?
Yes.
Kanina ko pa hinihintay yun, Pascal's wager. Yun nga, yun ang argument ni Kohler. So sinasabi niya, i-assume daw natin yung worst possible scenario. Ang problema sa worst possible scenario kasi, let's say, there is a hell. No, let's assume that. The problem is, anong version ng hell ang dapat nating paniwalaan? Kasi there are so many versions out there. Even if I grant you na meron ngang hell at meron ngang malevolent being, which is either God or Satan, that will put us or torture us in hell, there is still no guarantee na makukuha natin yung tamang version ng hell. Because, for example, in Christianity alone, there are 30 to 40,000 denominations, each claiming that they are the correct version of Christianity, each claiming that every other denomination would go to hell. Christianity pa lang yan. Di pa natin pinag-uusapan ng Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Islam, Judaism, and many other religions that we have never heard of. Not to mention yung mga patay ng religions na tinatawag nating mythologies. These could also be correct. Zeus could be correct. Odin could be correct. Ra could be correct. Pero hindi na natin iniisip yun. Bakit? We already know that there is a high possibility na mali itong mga relihiyon na ito. But we can still be wrong. That could still be the worst possible scenario. Essentially nga, ang argument ni Kohler ay Pascal's wager. Sinasabi niya na, total, di naman tayo sure. Total, baka mapunta tayo sa hell. Di maniwala na lang tayo. That's not a good argument. May tawag pa nga dun argumentum ad baculum, o yung appeal to the stick. Tatakutin ka. Mapupunta ka sa hell. Mamili ka na ngayon.
Well, okay, so why shouldn't we have to prove that wrong?
The burden of proof is on the person asserting the claim.
Right. Well, it's the person asserting the claim, but the thing about it is they could be right because we don't really know, do we?
Well, then it's up to them to prove that they're right.
Okay, then I'm going to tell you right now that there is a malevolent deity that put us all here, and no matter what you do or what you think, he's going to hang you upside down by your testicles for eternity and poke you with hot sticks. It doesn't matter. You can't get out of it.
I can't get out of it.
You need to prove. Well, the only way out of it is to send me a check for $1 million. Now you need to assume that since that's the worst case scenario, that it's true. So you should have to prove that wrong, right?
Okay, and normally I guess I guess according to a normal thing I would ask you, well, what makes you so right? And so but you don't think that's right. So
no. That's the perfect question. That's the question we say you're not asking. You're saying we need to assume that the worst is true and prove it wrong. And when I challenge you with that, you come back with, well, normally I'd ask you what makes you so right. That's the right question. That's what we're saying needs to happen.
Okay. All right. So in response to that, what I would say is that, okay, well, I'm not quite sure that you're right. So what I'll do is I'll just basically observe. I'll assume something and then ask you questions to that. Like, so for example, I'll say, I believe that there is a deity because I believe that there's a limit to the amount of experiences that I have. Okay, I've experienced everything in my life that I believe to be good. I believe to be bad. I know everything that I know. I know that there's possibly a limit to everything I can know that I can learn with the time that I have here on this earth.
How does that lead to, you just said, there's a deity because there's a limit to your knowledge. How does having a limit on knowledge lead to there is a deity as a conclusion?
Basically, again, ang argument ni caller ay argument from ignorance or argumentum ad ignorantiam. Dahil limited ang ating knowledge, baka totoo tong sinasabi ko. I think, and to be fair, this is the strongest argument for the existence of God. Why? Because the premise is true. It is true na limited nga ang alam natin sa mundo. Limited ang knowledge natin at understanding natin kung saan tayo nanggaling, meron ba talagang Diyos at iba pang mga issue patungkol sa purpose at mga ganyang bagay. Pero, hindi magandang pundasyon ng isang conclusion ang pagsasabi na I don't know, therefore X. When we say I don't know, hindi ko alam, period na dapat dun. Hindi magandang pundasyon ng konklusyon ang hindi pagkaalam. Ang unang-una dapat nating gawin kapag sinabi nating hindi ko alam ay tingnan natin kung ano. Hindi ko alam, therefore, ito na yon.
Okay, because there is a limit to my knowledge, there is something just beyond it.
No. That's are
there things that you don't know?
Well, yes. But because something is not known doesn't mean that it's unknowable, and it doesn't mean
because something is unknown does not mean it's not known.
No, because just because something is unknown does not mean that it's unknowable.
It does not mean it's unknowable.
It also doesn't mean that
potentially, right?
And just because I don't know something doesn't mean there's somebody out there who does.
Who doesn't? Okay.
No, who does?
Do you know for certain that the person sitting next to you right now, Matt? Do you know that Jen is sitting next to you right now?
For certain, depends on what you mean by for certain, but for the highest possible degree of certainty, I know that Jen is sitting next to me.
Ito na naman tayo sa problema ng knowledge and belief. Kasi sabi niya, alam mo ba talaga na yung si Jen ay nakaupo sa tabi mo? Mahirap na tanong yun. Kasi we could be living in a simulation. Pwedeng hindi pala totoo lahat ng nakikita natin. Pwedeng nasa computer matrix pala tayo and everything. Kaya meron tayong fundamental philosophical assumptions. And gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, yung second nating assumption ay we can interact with the physical world via our senses. And when we learn something via our senses, things that give us consistent results are most likely true. Mahirap kasi yung solipsism, hard solipsism, yung sinasabi mo na hindi natin malalaman for certain ang kahit ano, which is true because our senses are flawed. Hindi natin malalaman kung totoo ba tayo o hindi. But we are stuck with this scenario. And luckily, we have senses. Also, luckily, we have the scientific method to test. Can we externally verify itong bagay na ito? Sabi niya, alam mo bang nakaupo si Jen sa tabi mo? Sigurado ka ba? Well, if we go for hard solipsism, hindi ko alam. Baka naman ginagawa ko lang si Jen sa isip ko. Maybe I'm just imagining Jen in my mind. Pero, can we externally confirm na nakaupo nga si Jen? Oo. Nakikita ng audience. Pwedeng hawakan ni Jen si Matt. Pwedeng kurutin ni Jen si Matt at masasaktan si Matt. Pwedeng tanungin lahat ng tao sa buong mundo kung nakaupo ba si Jen sa tabi ni Matt. At pag sinabi ng lahat ng taong oo, posibleng totoo. We cannot be sure 100% of course, but we have no choice. Kailangan nating i-assume that the physical world interacts with us.
I'll do that experiment again.
Okay.
There. There's an
Yeah,
experiment.
right. You post that. So basically Matt's probably there.
So
But the thing about it is that may be an illusion.
It could be.
it could be.
You might
but,
be wrong.
Yep.
But you know, if our senses are an illusion, if everything we see, if we're just a brain in a vat,
Then we're in big trouble.
well, exactly. And the thing is, we have no basis for even having this conversation.
Right. We have no basis. We don't have no basis for anything.
So-
But the
and-
thing
and-
about it is,
So all we
even
can
if-
know is what we
even
can.
if there is a malevolent deity out there, though,
Yes.
that is making that happen, and that really sucks if we're brains in a vat.
You know what?
Even if there's a
I can't
malevolent
worry
deity-
about that.
Right. Even if there
I have
is
no
a
reason to
malevolent-
worry about that.
Right. We still exist, though.
And here it goes. Problema yan. Kasi sinasabi niyang we exist. Pero kanina sinasabi niya, how can we be sure? How can he be sure that he exists? And what is existence, by the way? Yung bang file ko na nasa USB ko, flash drive, ay nag-i-exist? What if his mind is merely a computer program, which means that he really doesn't exist in the colloquial sense? He's using an argument na pwedeng gamitin laban sa kanyang stand.
Well,
Yes.
right. And you know what? By using my senses and by using critical thinking skills and even the scientific method here and there, I'm able to produce repeatable results.
Mm-hmm.
My senses are reliable, and I can use the information I gain to make predictions about the real world. So on that basis, I conclude that what I'm perceiving as reality is in fact here.
Our senses are not reliable 100%. They may be reliable to an appreciable extent, but it still fails. But of course, we can say that the rate at which it fails is negligible. Pwede nating sabihin na, oo naman, nagfe-fail ang senses natin, pero consistently, binibigyan tayo ng good results. For example, yung upuan mo sa bahay. Tuwing umuupo ka sa bahay, dun sa paborito mong upuan, basta inilalagapak mo na lang yung puwet mo dun. Hindi ka na nagwo-worry. Bakit? Kasi ina-apportion mo yung belief mo na hindi ka babagsak. Nakakayanin ka ng upuan mo base sa iyong mga experience. Mula nung binili mo yung upuan na yun, hindi ka pa bumagsak. Ni minsan, hindi pa nabali yung paa ng upuan na yan. Kaya naman, kung uupo ka dyan bukas, malamang hindi mo naiisipin kung babagsak ka ba o hindi. Tama ka ba na hindi ka babagsak bukas? Tama ka ba na hindi mababali yung paa ng upuan bukas? Hindi. Di natin alam. Our senses may fail us. Pero dahil consistent yung binibigay sa ating results, mataas ang confidence natin na tama tayo.
Right. To the limit that the scientific process allows you to do that.
But I don't want to get sidetracked. A minute ago, you said that you know there's a deity because there's a limit to your knowledge, and I have yet to hear anything that approaches an explanation of how you got. Here's what it is.
Right.
There's a limit to my knowledge. I need this step, and then there is a deity. What's this step?